you.
I'm Jared Bowen. Tonight on Greater Boston, Dr. Ibram X. Kendi, the founding director of the BU Center for Antiracist Research, joins me on the murder of Tyre Nichols, the release of footage showing him beaten by Memphis police officers, and questions surrounding who should and should not watch it. Then later, Tom Brady announces his retirement again. Two veteran NFL reporters will weigh in ahead. And a look at Madhouse Motors in Roxbury. More than a bastion of bikes, it's a veritable artist's workshop. Tyre Nichols was laid to rest in Memphis today with thousands of mourners in attendance, including Vice President Kamala Harris, the families of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and Reverend Al Sharpton.
A good person, a beautiful soul, a son, a father.
This violent act was not in pursuit of public safety.
I don't know when, I don't know how, but we won't stop until we hold you accountable and change this system.
Over the past several weeks, Tyre Nichols' murder has sparked outrage and protests with renewed calls for widespread police reform. But since Memphis police released footage of officers brutally beating Nichols, many have raised the question of whether it's a civic responsibility to watch the video, or should it be avoided for the inherent trauma it presents. Joining me to discuss is Dr. Ibram X. Kendi, the founding director of the BU Center for Antiracist Research. He's also the author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, How to Raise an Anti-Racist, and now he's out with his newest release in bookstores now, How to Be a Young Anti-Racist, which he co-authored with Nick Stone. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Let me just start with this debate that a lot of people are having once this video was released and the decision whether or not to watch it. Is it a decision that you had to mull yourself, and how did you arrive at your own decision?
Well, it is a decision that I had to mull over, and I actually decided to split the difference. So I haven't watched the entirety of the video and really videos. I've watched parts of them because indeed it is pretty traumatic, specifically for me as a young Black male. And I can't watch Tyre being beaten in those videos without seeing myself or other people that I love. And so, but I also knew that I would get asked about it, and I'd have to obviously comment about it. And I wanted to obviously, particularly as a scholar, we have to speak from the evidence. And so I felt that I had a duty because of my vocation to at least watch parts of it. But I could certainly understand if other people didn't want to watch any of it.
Well, Renee Graham, writing in the Boston Globe, she starts her column listing the names of 34 individuals, 34 Black people whose videos of them being beaten by police have been released. With this coming on the heels of so many other videos, to people who argue it is a civic responsibility, what does it add at this point when there is a level of re-traumatization?
So I actually don't think that it adds, and I think for those people who somehow still think that police violence is not a major, persisting, constant problem in our society, if people can't recognize that what the police say isn't always the truth. Indeed, the police report in Tyre Nichols' case was radically different from what we all saw with our eyes. I don't know if another video is going to change their minds.
The Memphis Police Department, the chief, her intention in releasing this video was to have people understand what the family felt, what Tyre Nichols' family felt. I wonder, though, with the proliferation of these videos, with nonstop news coverage, how emotionally resonant it becomes, and what you think of that in that regard.
Well, I mean, I think for anyone who cares about people and who doesn't see whether they're Black or not Black, who sees themselves and their loved ones in Tyre Nichols, it's hard not for them to be, emotionally sort of really wrenched from watching that video and watching that beating at the hands of people who imagine that they're seeking to protect Tyre. But I think it's what makes it even more wrenching emotionally is to see so many videos, video after video, month after month, and at the same time, not see change.
I wonder where this all stands too, again, with the proliferation of videos on social media, where we see people around us just scrolling through videos, just digesting videos of a horrific nature as if it were a cat video or something else, because it's just being fed to us. That stacked up against what we see in media, television shows, movies. And so I guess it's a long way of asking about the depiction of violence and whether we as a collective society at this point are becoming perhaps overly desensitized to it.
Oh, I definitely think we're being desensitized, and I think we've long been desensitized to particularly Black people dying at the hands of police, because for whatever reason, it takes a video of this nature, a video of the brutality of a George Floyd, for people to realize that there's a serious, essential problem here. And I think that I wish that it didn't take such brutal videos for people to recognize the problem of racism that we need to eradicate.
In the conversation about this video, a lot of people have gone back to maybe Till Mobley, who, of course, very famously in 1955 made the decision to have an open casket so that people, as she said, I wanted the world to see what they did to my baby, the violence perpetuated against her son, Emmett Till. Is there an especially poignant reason at this moment that we look back to what she did and why that conversation is so heavy again around this particular video?
Well, I think it is an apt historical parallel, especially if in the next 10 years, based on the policy changes, the activism, the organizing, the education we collectively engage in, that we will have been able to eradicate police violence in the way a decade after the maybe decided courageously to show her child's brutalized and beaten to a pulp face. A decade after that, we had largely eradicated Jim Crow.
I was struck on your Twitter feed today. You posted pictures of Tyre Nichols skateboarding, something we know he absolutely loved to do. He loved being a videographer and capturing skateboarding, capturing sunsets. He was a photographer. What was behind your decision to resurrect that part of him today?
It really was inspired by Tyre's friend who posted that video and said that he wanted his friend to not be remembered by the video of him being beaten by the police and really calling out for his mother, trying to really save his life, but he wanted his friend to be remembered through his smiles. And of course, he always gained those smiles while skateboarding with the sun setting, at a distance.
Your latest book, it works with young people in terms of being anti-racist. Even in our own newsroom this morning, their stories were being shared about how to deal with young children seeing this video as it does play on the news or as it plays in a restaurant where someone may be attending. As you look at the younger generation with this onslaught of videos as part of their daily reality, sadly, how do you begin to counsel parents about their children and what their children will experience or what maybe they should shield them from?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why Nick Stone and I wrote How to Be a Young Anti-Racist, which is really for middle schoolers and high schoolers who are witnessing police violence, who sometimes are even subjected to police violence. In the case of a 12-year-old Adam Toledo in Chicago or Tamir Rice in Cleveland. And it's important for them to understand racism because, unfortunately, it's affecting them too. But more importantly, they want to know how to fight back. They want to know how to challenge racism. They want to join with adults to create equality. And so that's one of the reasons why we wrote How to Be a Young Anti-Racist. And part of that is we have to be honest with them about what's going on in society and why, including in this case.
Do we as adults not give children enough credit for understanding and processing what the reality is in the world around them?
No, we don't. And indeed, the studies show that like Black teenagers experience 5 instances of racist discrimination per day. Studies are showing that white teenagers are regularly on the receiving end of white supremacist propaganda, particularly on multiplayer videos and, on social media. And so if they're not understanding what's happening to them because nobody's talking to them about racism, because we're not giving them the credit to be able to understand it, because we're not preparing them to protect themselves, then it's going to create all sorts of challenges for them, which is, again, why it's so important for them to have How to Be a Young Anti-Racist and other books like it.
Well, then let me conclude by bringing you back to our opening concept was the question that people are facing, is it my civic responsibility? So to bring it back to adults then who wrestle with this, obviously it's a very personal decision. It's a very emotional decision. It's very difficult to watch. I actually made the same decision you did to watch only parts so that I could be informed for my job. But how do you, is there advice that you give to people as they're weighing this going forward?
I think we have to think both about our ideas and our emotions. And so I think if someone is in a place in which they still don't know or understand police violence and what could happen, then I think it's important for that person to watch this video in full. But I also think it's important if a person already knows that, and a person is already emotionally fatigued from having watched video after video, they don't need to know or see another Black person being shot or beaten by the police, then it's not as necessary.
Well, Dr. Ibram X. Kendi, we appreciate your taking time out of your book tour. We know you're a busy guy to speak with us today. We're grateful.
Of course, thank you as always for having me.
That book, again, is How to Be a Young Anti-Racist, and Dr. Kendi will be at Porter Square Books in Cambridge this coming Tuesday to discuss it. For tickets and information, go to portersquarebooks.com/event. Well, next up, a local icon made a major announcement today, but haven't we already been there, done that?
I'm retiring for good.
The greatest of all time, Tom Brady, announcing his retirement from professional football on his social media this morning. The announcement comes exactly 1 year after he announced his retirement the first time, only to change his mind 40 days later. Brady is a 7-time Super Bowl champion, 6 here in New England, 5-time Super Bowl MVP, 15-time Pro Bowler, and #1 in NFL history for completions, pass attempts, and quarterback wins. So, can we finally start referring to Brady's career in the past tense? With me to discuss is Karen Guregian, sports columnist with the Boston Herald, where she's covered Tom Brady and the Patriots since 2007, and Ben Volin, senior NFL reporter with the Boston Globe. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks for having me today.
So, Ben, let me start with you. Is it really for good? This is the question everybody wants to know. It's deja vu, as you were saying just a moment ago. We're here again.
Yeah, I had to check the calendar first. Is there a February Fool's joke or something? Because it was just exactly a year ago to the day that Tom Brady announced this the first time. And I'll be honest, there's a part of me that's not going to fully believe that he's retired until the season kicks off this September and Tom Brady's not on a team. That said, I do think this time it's for real. It's time. He's won everything there is to win, accomplished everything there is to accomplish. He's 45 going on 46. His kids are getting older. He's got some family issues off the field, divorcing his wife this past season. It's time for Tom Brady. He's got his health. He's got everything he could ever possibly want. Well, so it's definitely time.
And he's got $375 million in the offing with Fox News, which we'll get to in a moment. But Karen, you've been covering Brady forever. Is there something that changed in the man that you recognized that this makes sense right now?
Well, I don't know if anything changed. I think he just got a little smarter about his future, maybe. His initial goal was to play till 45, and correct me if I'm wrong, he's 45. He got through his age 45 season, and that was the goal. And there were only like a handful of places or situations that would be suitable to him or fit his desire to win. And, you know, looking at it in the big picture, it just was no longer worth it.
Well, yeah, but I wanted to pick up on that point. People say that, yeah, essentially he was out of options about where he could play. Was there anything left? Did he run out all the options? Because he has been incredibly strategic throughout his career. There is a reason, in addition to his epic talent, that he got as far as he did.
Yeah, to be honest, this announcement today surprised me because I did think that he was going to be playing next year. He gave every indication.
Where did you think he'd be playing?
So I thought he definitely was going to have options, whether it was returning to the Buccaneers. You know, that's a team that has proven over the last 3 years they will do whatever it took to keep Tom Brady happy. And if he said he wanted to come back for a 4th season, I think they would have accepted him with bells on. So I think absolutely staying in Tampa would have made sense. Las Vegas joining Josh McDaniels with the Raiders. San Francisco returning home and playing for his childhood team. The 49ers suddenly need a quarterback with Brock Purdy having hurt his elbow. So Tom Brady, even at age 45, had a pretty good season this year. The Bucs struggles, but it wasn't Tom Brady's fault. And I really did think by his comments from the last month that he was still talked about how much he loved the process. I really did think he was going to play next year. So this caught me by surprise. And I think there definitely would have been a spot for him somewhere next year.
Well, Karen, to that point then, how much is this just about legacy at this point, too? We have to think that Tom Brady was very concerned about how he goes out and how he's ultimately remembered. I kind of think that the public memory is not going to remember this last season, which is probably his weakest for the way it ended. But where is legacy in how he makes his decisions?
Yeah, I think I agree that, you know, whatever happened this year isn't going to change people's view of him. But if he started stacking years like that, you know, it's like your lasting image. And I agree with Ben. He could still play. There's no question about it. He could still help a team win. But in terms of doing what he wants to do, win another championship, the field narrowed down as to where exactly he could go for that to happen. And if it was San Francisco, did he want to where he would be closer to his parents, but miles away from his kids? He'd also have to learn a new offense. And again, there's just, do you want to do that when you're 46? He wouldn't have to do that in Vegas because he would jump right into Josh McDaniels' offense. But how close are the Raiders to winning? You know, all of these things factored in. And I think in the end, it was just time.
So I mentioned earlier this $375 million contract he has with Fox Sports to be some sort of personality over the course of 10 years. Is he going to join your side of the fence? What does the world look like with Tom Brady talking about the field rather than being on it?
That's a great question. And we're talking today about Tom Brady retiring from the NFL. He's retiring from playing in the NFL. I have a feeling he is not retiring from football. And obviously, as you said, he's got this reported 10-year deal with Fox Sports to be their #1 commentator. Ostensibly, it's to be in the booth, but you never quite know. In the NFL, these alternative broadcasts are big. Peyton Manning and Eli Manning have shown Tom Brady that there's a different way to do it. So maybe Brady gets involved with Fox Sports in a more non-traditional way. I know Fox Sports has the Super Bowl next week in Arizona, so I would think Brady's going to be front and center, maybe not necessarily on the game broadcast, but in the pregame, at the weekend's festivities. I think, you know, Peyton Manning and Eli Manning have shown that even after you're done playing, there's still a lot of room in the NFL for legendary quarterbacks. So I think Brady will still be very much involved.
Well, I want to go to Karen for that. I keep feeling like you know Tom Brady exceptionally well because you've been around him and watching him for so long, but it really is hard to believe. And maybe we understand this from his struggle to really retire last year, that he can walk away, what it'll do to him to not be playing anymore and how he is going forward.
Yeah, I think that's such a tough thing for every athlete or most athletes to walk away. It's been their life forever, and for him, longer than most. But again, I think he was very conscious of, in his words, not wanting to quote unquote suck, in his final years. He didn't want to go out past the time he should. And I think he was very conscious of that. And while he didn't quite hit that stage this year, there were some cracks in the foundation. So I think he was very conscious of that. But I do love Ben's idea of doing something a little bit different, as opposed to just kind of being, the color analyst. Maybe he'll have his buddies, Julian and Danny Amendola and Gronk, and they'll compete with the Mannings. They'll have their own sit down cast and crew for games. And I don't know, I can sort of see that happening.
Well, Ben, I hate to sour this by asking about Bill Belichick, but we started thinking about this, of course, after he left the Patriots. But as, again, we're looking at legacy, where does Bill Belichick fit into the Brady legacy?
I do think that with Brady going down to Tampa and winning the Super Bowl in his first year there without Bill Belichick, that did kind of tilt the balance of power in Brady's favor as far as who's more responsible for the dynasty. That said, these guys are going to be intertwined forever. It's always going to be Brady and Belichick, much in the same way Michael Jordan and Phil Jackson. And it's no knock on Michael Jordan that he needed a great coach to get him over the top. And I think that's pretty much true for Brady as well. Brady was an all-time great quarterback, but Belichick, I think, really helped make him the greatest of all time. So obviously, towards the end of their 2-decade tenure, things got a little hairy between the two of them, but I give them a lot of credit for keeping it together for 20 years. Belichick, I'm sure, is not an easy boss to work for. And then when Brady came back in 2021 with the Buccaneers, they spent 25 minutes after the game alone in the locker room, catching up, breaking things down. So I really thought that was a nice moment between them. So certainly, it's always going to be Brady and Belichick hand in hand.
Okay, well, I'm going to, with the state's new online betting system over at Encore, I'm going to bet that we're not together this day in 2024, that this is for real. Thank you both for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Finally, tonight, a visit to an artist's workshop, although one you might not expect. I recently had the chance to visit Madhouse Motors in Roxbury. It's a rumbling repository for motorcycles, but also a coffee shop with Middle Eastern flair. And to bike aficionados, it's Eden. How do you describe this place?
The coolest place I've ever been.
Nick Timney is the manager of Madhouse Motors in Boston. It's a place for tune-ups and repairs, but also much more than that. A place where antique bikes live, where they take on new personas, and where people like Timney, who grew up riding dirt bikes on West Virginia trails, are drawn to test their mettle.
I would come to the shop at like 8 in the morning. And I would work until 5 o'clock when I had to go to my bar job. And I would work until 4 in the morning. Like 2 years of that. And I think I kind of proved myself to her, and I became a mechanic at Madhouse.
She is Jay Shia, owner of Madhouse Motors and sculptor of motorcycles.
Yeah, so there's a lot of parts on both these bikes that are abnormal. Everything from like where you put your feet on these to the tail lights. Tail light on this is an egg slicer. It functions, it has a purpose, instead of it just being there for aesthetic appeal.
Picasso did that a lot.
He did, but people don't talk as much about his sculpture work.
Shia and her team run the creative arm of Madhouse Motors like an artist's workshop, a place of design, discussion, and experimentation with every bike.
We want it to be composed properly and be aesthetically beautiful and be able to carry a storyline. Yeah, we view it like making a kinetic sculpture, and if someone calls it art, I think we're all ecstatic about it.
How much does a bike tell you what it should be?
Oh, the whole time. It's like I'm really not in as much control as I would like to be.
Motorcycles are in her blood, an interest Shia inherited from her enthusiast father, and before that, her grandmother, seen here in Lebanon. It's also an interest influenced by her photography studies at the Massachusetts College of Art and Design.
I hated working on bikes. I'd show up to school dirty and smell like gas and oil, and I didn't enjoy it. When I got older, I realized that trained my brain to look at a machine or look at a motorcycle, look at a custom build and say, all right, this color palette's off, or this shape is wrong, or what's the point of this? The same way that in art class, we would dissect and digest a piece of work.
13 years ago, she named the shop after her family home, a madhouse, as she describes it.
Like the community watering hole. And so people from all over the world, all different walks of life, would go there and have meals and decompress and sleep there.
If the soil is fertile, things will grow, and this place is very fertile.
Rami al-Bishara is the shop's newest member. He arrived from Beirut, where both he and his own bike shop fell victim to the Port of Beirut explosion in 2020.
The roof of my house caved in, my shop was destroyed. It was a very testing time. I've lived in a lot of places where there's war and conflict, and this probably was one of the worst things I've experienced.
He rebuilt, but with Lebanon's economic collapse and after a chance meeting with Shia, he moved to the U.S. In his new Madhouse Motors job, he's losing himself in a wonderland of motorcycles he's never encountered. Museum pieces, he says, like this 1972 Honda CB500.
When this hit the market, nothing was going as smooth, as reliable, and as fast. I know it doesn't look like it, but this is just poetry in motion.
Like Shia, al-Bashara also has a formal arts background, designing fonts before bikes beckoned full-time.
A typeface that works is the one that you can't notice. If you're reading a headline on a newspaper, it's the headline that matters, not the typeface.
So then how do you apply that to motorcycles?
They gotta run. They gotta work, and they have a look and feel.
Feeling, he says, may be the greatest measure of success.
Motorcycle is a collection of parts until you get on it and you start it and the engine becomes alive and then it becomes an experience. It's now you are ingrained deep into the function of the motorcycle and what feeling it will instill in you.
So it's here in this madhouse that ideas rev to fruition, where a saxophone can play the exhaust, and where new beginnings are had for man and machine. And that is all for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm Jared Bowen. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Next time on